Hey, good morning. It's 10:02 a.m. It is May 3rd. It is officially, in my mind anyway, Saturday morning. I did do a video early in the, or early in the middle of the night, or you could say late in the middle of the night. It was around 3 o'clock in the morning when I made a video earlier. And I was, obsessing about the same issue. Good and well, this video is about the same topic, but anyway. Yeah, I tend to think a lot about, the drudgery that, life has become because of the dark cloud that was cast upon, the American people. And I'm sure it's spread in other places as well. This was like an orchestrated type of power control, whatever. And, it does. It demoralizes people to where they literally no longer care about anything. And that's why you have people bed rotting and this sort of stuff, okay? Um, it's the kind of dictatorship by the Mormon Church as well as a collaboration among, people who had similar interests, into promoting a certain ideal world or morphing it into, their idea of a utopia, but to everyone else, it was just nothing more than a dystopia, a negative one. Anyway, so, I was thinking, today I'm going to be doing some more dictation or narrating, I guess, of my video. And like I said, what's missing in my project is my enthusiasm. And I want to because create this because, when I created the Swan Song Manifesto, I meant to be able to leave something that was important in my life, through this last part of my journey because I'm getting older and I don't know when I'm going to depart this earth. Unfortunately, there's something in my DNA that that makes it so that I live a very long life. I have I guess very strong DNA, which is one of the reasons why I was targeted because of my bloodline. In the past, when I was 94 years old at CB Braganza, I decided to end my life at some point, possibly because, at 94, I probably could not get a job or whatever, so they put me in the insane asylum or whatever, just kind of grouped you together with all these people that were no longer able to function in society for whatever reason. But I have never lost my sanity. I'm not as C.B. Braganza and not as Maria Gordon. But, I'm trying to make the best out of this life. This life is Maria Gordon after, experiencing things that made me feel terrorized for a very long time. And I know that a lot of other people have expressed something similar, because I've seen a lot of girls and women posting videos about what's been going on, where people asking questions and being intrusive. My issues of people monitoring my behavior and then quote unquote punishing me by either demoting me or monitoring my actions, and punishing me based on things that their own personal preferences. Like, I know there were times where people would sit here and try to badger me about going to, I believe it was like Trader Joe's, and every once in a while I'll go to Trader Joe's. Like I said, why? Because it breaks up the monotony. If I was to go to the same place all the time, it would be, it's too routine. The reason what makes people's mood sad is because it's too routine. You know what I mean? And, it's these things. I have found ways to try to, you know, uh, yeah, navigate through these difficult times where I'm not feeling as upbeat or whatever. But then it's good to change the routine. Just like when I used to work, especially when I used to work at KERO, there were times where I would wake up in the morning and I'd have to go to work. There were times where I decided to change the route of how I would drive. Like sometimes I would cut through a one street, and then sometimes I would take a main road, or sometimes I would take the little freeway or whatever. You know what I mean? Just because I wanted to shake up the routine, make it a little bit different, because I did not want to always have to feel like this monotonous drag every single day. And I know that, they were picking on my clothes, they were picking on my hair, they were picking on everything. This sort of behavior, it's bullying, okay? And over a long period of time, it can affect people. Menticide, meaning somebody trying to, shape and mold a particular person or a society as whole or whatever, has devastating effects on people, especially when, you were used to understanding that this is why you live in this country. So it was just very disturbing to me. I do understand that, like when it comes to my personal choices, that is like, how dare someone intervene? Like, this is what I'm telling you. If you don't set boundaries, people are ignorant and they will try to cross over those boundaries, and the reason why they cross over those boundaries is because nobody ever set the example. Nobody ever explained to them proper manners, proper behavior. I know parents generally do teach their kids to say things like please and thank you. Another thing that parents are responsible for doing is making sure that kids, their children understand people's personal property and their personal space. Okay, things that belong to other people should be understood in the minds of children that that's not appropriate to touch. It's not appropriate to do anything. Like when my son was little and he would go over to a friend's house or they would come over to my house, they would sometimes want to play with something or whatever. It's like, the kid would ask, can I do this? You're supposed to ask, before you ask permission of that person. And, I understand, I mean, that is the normal way of dealing with things. You don't just take things. You don't just man things. You don't just take control over something. So we had the shocking part is that we had people who were I was dealing with narcissism, narcissistic abuse. Narcissism is it's a personality. I'm going to say it's a personality trait, okay? But these personality traits do manifest through like disorders, certain negative behavioral patterns or traits, okay? Like, a part of narcissism is to not be concerned about the well-being of other people. Their needs come first, even when their need is not justified. Like, I'm an adult over the age of 18. My only responsibility is myself. I am financially responsible for myself. I'm supposed to be responsible for my own mental well-being. I am not reliant on anybody like my parents or anything. I'm responsible for myself. And that's how it is for everybody. Okay, according to the law, like if you do something, you're going to be penalized for it or whatever. Okay, when you sign out a loan, it's your responsibility. Or you take on a responsibility or whatever, that is me and me alone. Okay, I didn't have any association or did not consent for people to dictate my life or be a part of my business journeys or whatever, and so by people manning my social media and dictating how I lived, oh my God, that was too much. It's too much. It's just like, what, you have overstepped these boundaries. It's just like, and when you think about how, I had referenced the First Amendment in the newsletter, it's like, it scares me to death having to deal with this sort of that or having to explore, even knowing that I experienced having to deal with something like that, especially when it becomes a work-related issue. It's very, very, very disturbing to me. Like, that's one of the reasons why I made that Dickie Mode video, because it has left a very lasting impression on my mind, and it is the main reason for my mental problems. It is the main reason for my mental problems. And do I believe that it's the main reason for a lot of people? I think it's the main reason for a lot of people's problems because it's unnecessary stress. It's unnecessary fear. It's unnecessary agitation that gets added into a person's life that doesn't need to. The only reason why somebody would want to control another person is so that they feel glorified or they feel like, a sense of power. It's distorted, okay? And it's too much. Everybody, has their own individual way of doing things. Like, I was talking about, okay, because I am who I am, okay? And because I was bullied out of the system, like I talked about me being bullied out of school, and me being an autodidact and everything. And because I've experienced weird things like, seeing my father, who was a pretty decent, healthy person, right? Get affected by an Alzheimer's related disease, knowing that, my father had the strength of the same kind of person I did, but I understand the kind of mental tactics. So I understand what goes on, when we talk about things like dual affiliations, like, doctors and nurses, and the doctor that decided to inject my thigh with, I don't know, could have been a saline solution, could have been just water, could have just been poking me with an empty needle just to be doing it, or he could have been poking me with a tracking device. Okay, I've experienced unprofessional things that made me raise an eyebrow in the medical industry. So that is another industry that, or a part of the system. You know what I'm saying? The system that is kind of plugged in, a network system that I have frowned upon for many years. And, I used to, I would say I stopped going to doctors a while ago because I question this. When you are a targeted individual, it is the best thing for you to do to stay clear from those people and those sort of institutions, because those institutions have spies, people who could be affiliated with either the Mormon Church or the Mormon offshoots, people who promote this sort of let me fight for the New World Order agenda, these sort of people, okay, who are manning these particular positions, who may be doing a lot of unethical things. And it's not just that industry. It could also be, I don't go to restaurants very often. And if I do go to restaurants, I usually go to restaurants where, I could either just kind of like go to an all-you-can-eat buffet to where I can, pull my own food. But that doesn't mean that people aren't contaminating food. There's a lot of people who have pent up frustrations because, number one, they're not getting a decent wage, or they're going through certain problems. And I'm getting ready to do some dictation. Hopefully I'll be motivated to do that today. But I am talking about hurt people. That old phrase, hurt people, hurt people, hurt people, hurt people. So a lot of times, you'll see, I've talked about people peeing in coffee and stuff like that. People act out stuff. They would be willing to contaminate food, just because they feel like they are so suppressed, they're so unhappy, they're so boxed in, they need to release something, and they will resort to doing these sort of things. So I understand what's going on outside of the world. So you know what? I choose to alter that. Now, because I'm somebody who, I do not like pharmaceuticals in my body. I will tell you that right now. I do not trust that, especially when you have people with this sort of mentality. Bloodline targeting, this kind of stuff like that. I am not going to put myself into any sort of trust or care to these so-called professionals. So, I decided back in, I would say, over a decade ago, okay? And I already knew that nutrition was important, okay? So this is some of the reasons why I don't sit here and eat things like fast food. No, I'm not going to sit here and make my diet primarily consumed of canned goods. Okay, I try to eat fresh food as much as I possibly can, okay? And I understand even that is questionable. Okay, I don't necessarily even trust things that say organic. And no, I cannot afford organic food. All I can do is wash my food off as much as I possibly can. Okay, but that is pretty much what maintains, my decent health. Okay, I don't believe in taking pharmaceuticals. So then we have people who want to sit here and spy and talk about, oh, Maria's doing this and this and this and this and this. Yeah, I have the right to do that. I have the right to make the best choices I possibly can for my life. You know what I mean? I understand that this institution is very much based on Nazism. This is the truth. I mean, when you look at certain things like Planned Parenthood and certain these organizations, I understand they were very much influenced by Nazi ideology. You know what I mean? And I understand, I understand where these sort of influences come from. So, I understand that I knew that I was outside of the system, meaning because I was outside of the system, I have developed alternative methods of how I choose to live. You know what I mean? If I have some sort of flu system, which I don't deal with a lot of things that most people deal with. You know why? Because I eat decently, as decent as I possibly can. Okay, I don't like to eat, sugar and stuff like that. When I was a kid, I used to eat candy bars for breakfast. I used to do all that kind of stuff. I don't touch that unless, of course, it's a holiday or a special occasion. You know what I mean? And I do know that if I eat sugar, my brain starts to get severely depressed. It's just like a nosedive, okay? But trying to eat things like beans and stuff. I eat a lot of beans and stuff that help keep my brain function um, high and optimal. So, but those are my choices. You know what I mean? And so when people, sit here and want to attack me or try to enforce their choices onto me, I'm like, this is my life. This is how I choose to maintain it. It's none of your business. We have different options in the grocery store. We have different options, and those are your options. Okay, if it was illegal to sit here and buy a head of lettuce versus a Three Musketeer bar, they wouldn't be selling it, or they would be putting like lettuce, in some sort of cage thing or whatever, or you'd have to be like over the age of 18 to purchase it. It's a personal choice. You either choose the candy bar, or you choose the head of lettuce, or you choose the tomato, or you choose the, eggplant. You know what I mean? But that's my choice. You know what I mean? I cannot sit here and allow myself to open up the opportunity of 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 having a dragged down system, meaning like eating candy bars and stuff like that. I'm the only person I have to rely on. I can't sit here and open myself to things like diabetes, this kind of stuff that's not making my body feel good. When I was back in the 90s, I used to drink beer, and I used to I used to have a serious alcohol problem. I decided to stop that. I decided to change my life for the better. And then I had these Nazi people trying to beat me back down into submission. And this is what I kept thinking. These people are absolutely out of their mind. They are absolutely out of their mind. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to me, I understand throughout my adult years that no, I am not somebody who promotes the system. The education system. I see the flaws in the education system, and I see the flaws in the medical system. I see the flaws in the banking system. I see the flaws in just all of it. Okay? So I could thank God that I was thrown out of it, because it gave me the ability to see the flaws. And those are the flaws. Okay? There's major flaws, and sadly, religion has infiltrated these sort of places, you know what I mean? And some of these places were established from the very get-go to cause problems, chaos, and calamity, such as things like Planned Parenthood that, kind of evolved into something different. Planned Parenthood was originally, I believe, kind of like a genetic type, whatever. But anyway, what other thoughts do I want to talk about really quick? I do understand, the Nazis that were attacking me, are looking at their actions, and they're considering the possibility that they were fighting for something that was not really planned out very well. I think about people who get this desire to win in their mind, or this sort of need to feel superior, or have the feeling of being one-upping another person. I will say that, life is very bleak. It's very boring, okay? It is very boring, and so people want to find some sort of meaning in this existence, and everybody wants to find meaning in this existence, and I understand that, okay? But the sad part is that many people get fed a lie. They get fed a lie into what is going to fulfill them. They get fed a lie into, things being far more grandiose than they really are. And there's really nothing, whatever it is that you want in life, you have to make it yourself. And it's not anything over the top. It's just basic, like this is why I find so much contentment in my life, because I'm not sitting here trying to live in a mansion or whatever. If I am given like this apartment, right? I mean, I don't have any great furniture. Like, like I said, I don't have anything of any value. I don't. You know what I mean? I remember when I first started working and stuff, and I would get to a certain position, I would try to put things together. Like I remember buying a nice couch and a nice furniture set, and I was ready to add on to it, and then it always seems like, something bad happens, I could lose my job, because I believe that I was attacked for a very long time, and people have wanted to monitor my behavior and my purchases and the things that I've wanted to do for a very long time. And every time, I've never been able to establish myself to where I could work consistently without being mobbed out of my job. I've never been able to have that sort of things to where I could buy a house and all that other stuff. And there was a time where, buying a house would have been a good idea because houses were affordable. You know what I mean? And that I did. I remember I used to think the houses over on Oleander Street here in Bakersfield were just so charming. You know what I mean? And they were reasonably priced. You know what I mean? It was like, it was a doable situation a long time ago, and now it's like, oh my God, are you serious? Look how things have just like skyrocketed, right? So, I mean, the demoralization of, how to survive has been going on for quite a while, it really has. But, the thing is that the goal in life is to get through it. The goal in life is you got to keep going. You have to keep going, and this is what I'm determined to do, even though I am not enjoying the ride outside, meaning I'm content with the things I do at home. Okay. I am offended that people would sit here and try to tell me how to live my life, you know what I mean, what choices I'm supposed to make and whatever. And like, there's been times where I've stopped off at a fast food place. Like, there were times, like, I've always bought my lunch. Okay, I bring my lunch. And I bring my food with me, because I understand there's going to be times where my mood dips, and, food can fuel your mind, there's been times where, I would feel, depression, and, I find that certain fruits help me lift my mood. You know what I mean? Just like people who take antidepressants, that doesn't wipe out their depression completely. It's just a method. And my method is through food. My method is through food, nutrition. Okay. And I would not touch any pharmaceutical, and I have my reasons, and that's my choice. You know what I mean? I do believe that pharmaceuticals, they might claim to cure one thing, but then you've seen the commercials, like they talk about all these other side effects and whatnot. I try to stay away from the synthetic world as much as I possibly can, and that's my choice. You know what I mean? That's my choice. You know what I mean? And I'm just irritated and terrorized that somebody would try to even think that that was their right to do something like that. But like I said, this was bloodline targeting. What they wanted to do was be the winner, the winner, the winner, the winner. And, they're, I don't know, all that stuff is pretty overblown, really. It is. I mean, even if you, I think what people don't want to admit, they don't want to admit the fact that they admire me. They don't want to admit the fact that, I have superior traits, and then I do, you know what I mean? And I'm aware of that. I'm not saying this to brag. It is just the way it is. I wouldn't have all of these obstacles if it wasn't true, okay? But, even though I am, by a lot of people's definition, superior in a lot of things, I will tell you that does not make it so that I avoid feelings of depression, because in this hell realm, like I said, everybody gets their fair share of hell, okay? So, yeah, you can be what you call, quote unquote, the greatest or whatever, but then you have to deal with, your family having issues with you because they're not the greatest, and they're kind of jealous, and then they have their own little plots and schemes. Yes, I mean, nobody has it good on earth. They just don't. This is hell. Okay, so we have to navigate through it, and these are my methods to navigate through it. You know what I mean? As far as the whole white supremacy thing, that's unfortunate, but yeah, this is one thing that I think it's a spiritual lesson about contentment, being happy with the things that you do have, understanding that, and there's like fairy tale stories that, kind of go into wishing for things that really aren't worth pursuing, or it kind of bites you in the ass after you allow yourself to desire it so much, because it wasn't worth chasing after. You know what I mean? So like when I think of things like the New World Order, yeah, I mean everybody would like to live in a paradise, like Charles Taze Russell was talking about. And then the whole idea of New World Order, I mean, your version, the whole white supremacy thing seems scary. It seems scary for the women and it seems scary for the children, especially since I would believe that people would continue living on in clones or, bringing on these people with just, I'm going to say destructive behavior. You know what I mean? Always wanting power over one. Then there'd be women would be bullied. The kids would be bullied if they would not have any sympathy for their mothers going through any suffering or anything. I just think it just seems so dark. It just seems very, very dark. But then again, the whole thing wasn't planned out very well. You know why? Because they were focused on winning. They wanted the feel of some sort of like rush of feeling superior. It doesn't. That shit doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Even if you are quote unquote superior, nobody sits there and feels great and beaming and happy all the time. It's just, it is what it is. But anyway, yeah, I know that people had interest. I mean, like, people wanted to suppress my spirituality. My spirituality is rather private. Like, there's times I share things, like I shared some spells in my newsletters, and I did create a Ko-fi channel. We all know that stuff. The Patreon, the Ko-fi debacle. We all know what happened with that. But, I if I have the right to protect myself spiritually, and I believe in teaching people to protect themselves spiritually as well. I think some people who realize that you have a special spiritual gift, they become afraid of you. Like, what are you going to do to me? Absolutely nothing. Okay, but like I said, if you cross me, okay, or you create something to where you're trying to come up against me unfairly, or you're trying to prevent me from living my life anyway, yeah, Rex Laverne got what he got. You know what I mean? Steve Murray got what he got. It is what it is. Okay, why? Because that's not the way it's supposed to be. And when you think about the situation, it is fair and it is just. Why? Because how in the world could you sit here through this orchestration, want to bully up somebody that was cloned? I had no control over it. I had no, I had absolutely no hand in this conflict whatsoever. So when it comes to practicing things like, revenge spells or something like that, I do believe that you have to be pure in the argument. You cannot sit here and I don't have anything that I contributed to this. You know what I mean? So I'm justified in doing it. Okay, I am a just leader, meaning that I understand the heart condition of people before I attack. And these people were out of control. A lot of people don't understand, what it means to really be a friend. And I know Steve Murray thought, he used to say, hey, Maria, you're my friend. No, you're not my friend. Like I said, if you were my friend, you would have never come up against me. Rex Laverne is another one. When I was tapping into his mind, trying to understand him, which he was very twisted, I understood he wanted me to be his friend. See, and these people, these control, I don't know what they are. Are they alien hybrids? I think Steve Murray was an alien hybrid. But anyway, they think that friends are people that they can kind of collect and have around them and stuff like that. They don't see that a friend is really somebody that you support, okay? Like, support in my life journey. Like, I need, if I'm afraid of something, if something I have a goal that I want to accomplish, you're not going to obstruct me, okay? That's something an enemy would do. You see, people walk around in their mind. I'm telling you, society is very twisted. Very twisted. The way that they think and the things that motivate them are corrupt. And it's these sort of things that when I talk about that I can relate to in the Bible. And like I said, the Bible was written by several different individuals, okay? And some people wanted to promote an interesting agenda. And this is where I'm talking about certain books of the Bible where people could actually manipulate this stuff that people actually have used as some sort of playbook. Okay, King Solomon, I would have no interest in having any sort of war games, even though I'm the kind of person that would have has the strategic ability to win a war. You know why? Because I understand people, I understand systems, I understand, how all of that stuff works. And this is one of the reasons why, I'm talking about the moral reset because, like I said, I wish I had more passion to I was upset today because ordinarily I would wake up and want to start dictating. Like I'm so I'm into my project, but I'm also like the Pavlov's dog thing. It's like I'm so tired of being screwed with. I'm so tired of people thinking that they could put situations in place, and because what they were fearful of is that I would somehow, gain more power than they would as with the Mormon Church, or the Mormon Church wanted to, use me to propagate their religion or whatever. You know what I mean? I am not into religion. I am not into anything that this system has to offer. Meaning, when I say this system, I'm talking about their religions. I'm talking about their medical facilities. I'm talking about this structure that has destroyed the lives of so many people. Okay, I don't like it. Okay, that it is what it is. Okay, and so I do know that I had mentioned before that, they didn't like the fact that I'm somebody who practices spirituality the old-fashioned way, meaning, I'm somebody who practices alchemy, somebody who's interested in the occult sciences. I've always have been, but this is how things work. This is how the invisible realm works. This is how when you put out a prayer, it's a form of energy. It's just like a spell, it's some sort of intent that goes out and hopefully gets dispersed depending on how much energy you have behind it, right? And of course, throughout the course of time, these sort of secrets have been suppressed. This is one of the reasons why they call it occult knowledge, because a lot of people felt like, well, a lot of religions would feel, threatened by it because religions tend to water down the occult powers and the idea of accessing secret knowledge, because of course they didn't want people to have any sort of personal power. And that is why we have things like watered down religions such as even Mormonism, because I know Mormonism was someone who was extremely fascinated with Freemasonry, and I do know that some of their rituals or whatever were very based on that sort of stuff. But yeah, there were times that I have experienced astral projection, and I've never been able to master it. Like there were times when I would go to sleep and I would be able to separate from my body. Now this is something that occurs in a lot of people, and it usually occurs in them spontaneously. Like they go to sleep and they think they're waking up in the middle of the night, but they're actually waking up in their astral body. And they sometimes, hover over their house, or sometimes they find themselves in a different location or whatever. Astral projection. And I think I even mentioned some of my astral experiences growing up. And, as an adult, because I find so much discontentment, in my daily life, this is something that I've put it on the back burner throughout the years. I would, try to purposely, astral project, close my eyes and be able to deliberately release myself from my body. I am not able to do that. I have not mastered it, But I do know there are times when the times that I have astral projected, is for times where I felt very unhappy in my physical body. You know what I mean? Meaning I either wanted to escape my reality, and I feel this way very much right now. Like I'm so unhappy with my situation. So I'm thinking, okay, well, this is a good time to try astral projection. Yeah, and I know that there were people who were talking about that because I mentioned it, and I remember getting some sort of intuitive feeling that people wanted to prevent me from doing that. I have the right to do that. I have the right to practice my religion. I would never sit here and astral project and deliberately go into somebody's home or anything like that. I'm not into that. I'm more interested in flying. Like I would love to be able to fly, seriously, just like go into the nighttime sky and feel the breeze and stuff like that. I've had experiences similar to that. I remember having an astral experience a few years ago where it took place around, maybe I was in the backyard of my mom's house, okay, and what I did was I went through a window, and then I was out in the backyard, and then I started walking and gaining momentum, and then I kind of flew around a little bit. This is in the astral body, okay? And I know it sounds strange, but I've been able to do these things throughout the years spontaneously. But I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna sit here and try. I have, gotten used YouTube music to try to help me in mastering that. But there's been times I only had one time I had a decent experience with that. Anyway, but yeah, that's what I'm into. It is nothing to fear or anything. I'm not somebody who wants to hurt people. You know what I mean? I don't want to hurt people. I'm a very peaceful person. I promote, love. I'm a loving person. But I understand what is right and what is wrong. And when people try to prevent me from living my life, or people harass me, or people who try to belittle me in any way, or cause me any sort of psychological pain, especially, financial pain, and I feel as though that they are out of control, then I have no other choice. Because especially when it comes to things that relate to a covert operation, it's covert for a reason, because they deep down inside know that it's wrong to do. So this is a reason why it's all hush hush and everything like that. Okay, which means that I could sit here and go to the police department and tell them what I'm doing, but that person, the police department, could very well be an agent and somebody who participates in the underground system. So the only thing I have, the only defense I have, is magic, right? I can only wish people dead. That's the only thing I can do, right? So I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? And rightfully so. And I wouldn't do it just because I'm doing it because I think it's fun to do. I have the right to protect myself, And anyway, I did get the intuitive message that white people now are more interested in loving relationships. And I think maybe it's because I'm talking about the psychology behind, having families, like my parents, the kind of relationship that I have with my mom. It's natural for kids to want to feel secure and safe. And, I think, I don't know, because I'm not white, okay, but I know that I have experienced white people or been around white people. I was married to a white person. I do think that they have more interest in materialism than they do the concern of, an actual caring about another human being. See, now when it comes to like fake or forced relationships, and I think in some cases, even though my parents are both dead, but I do believe that my parents' relationship may have been inspired or encouraged by outside forces, right? And for reasons based on maybe genetics or something like that, they have all kinds of reasons, why they try to merge people together. But some people are not compatible. They're just not compatible. And what makes people compatible are the little differences that they have. Like, for example, some women like decorating their house in teacups, right? All teacups, all cute, pristine little things that make her feel feminine. And then she ends up marrying a guy that, wants to have stuff in the house, like, that looks like, moose heads and stuff like that. And they're not compatible. They're not compatible. They might be of the same religion, but they are not compatible. They might have these little differences, and some people think, oh, it's not that big of a deal, just overlook it, these little small things. But it's these little small things that over time are building up to resentments, and it can just skyrocket, snowball at a certain point, when people marry for material reasons. And like I said, this is one of the reasons why I don't like the idea of marriage, is because this is basically, to me, you're consenting to people being able to use you. And that is what it is to me. It's like, you know, you can't expect people to really care about, you know, the pain that you're going through. All they care about is, are you making money? Are you being able to get what I need and pay the bills or whatever? And some people's relationship kind of seems like that to me. Okay. And like I said, because I'm somebody like myself, people would, if I was in the wrong relationship, people would use me for my resources. Okay, and then try to prevent me from leaving or whatever. The foundation of a lot of people's relationships, because it's based on the gimme, 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 sometimes, you know, ends up being the worst platform for a relationship, and it's like a setup for abuse. It's like you're just asking for abuse. You know what I mean? It, you know, I think with people, I don't know. I'm not somebody who's pro marriage anyway, but you know, I think that's good that maybe they're considering the psychological effects of their relationships. You know, parents, and I'm talking about this in more recent. You know, the responsibility of a parent is, you know, to provide a home for their kids and make their kids feel safe and protected and hopefully loved. Hopefully, okay. Like I said, people have kids for all kinds of reasons. You know, they could be doing it out of form of tradition. It could be a thing to do, wanting to fill the population with children in the hope of having a new world order. Okay, but still, the idea of having life is not just to have life, because just to have life could be miserable. You know what I mean? It's like it's the quality of your life. You know, and that goes for all kinds of relationships, whether that be parental relationships, friendship. Have a higher standard. I have high standards for friendships, okay, because I know what it's like to be betrayed. You know what I mean? And the reason why people don't think about betrayals or the idea of true friendship is because they don't have any standards. They've never heard or maybe the concept of, you know, setting boundaries and standards for the kind of people that you want into your life. See, and I do think that maybe because I am, you know, this King Solomon line or whatever, I had Mormons, and because Mormons are all anti-bloodlines, they were probably wanting to, you know, marry me off to somebody else who might have had another bloodline or whatever, and that is not having, you know, bloodline. To me, I'm sorry, it's a compatible thing, and marriage to me is the equality of slavery under certain conditions. You know what I mean? And I'm not putting myself into any sort of abusive situations. I'm done. You know what I mean? It's like the abuse that these people have caused. You know what I mean? I'm not somebody who's pro-marriage, okay? And I have my personal reasons for that. That is not to say that people shouldn't. It depends. You know, like I said, it depends on the relationship. And I don't think people's relationships should be built on primarily the material, because it's, you know, you're basically opening yourself up for abuse. You know, they're only going to care about you when you can produce and when you can provide. If something happens to you, don't expect them to have concern or compassion for you. And why would they? Because you serve a particular function, right? So, you know, people act surprised when their spouses cheat on them. To me, it's like, well, and being married under those situations and under those circumstances, is it really cheating? Do you expect somebody to fully devote their time and their energy and quote unquote love to somebody that it was under forced conditions? Is that natural to do? It's not natural to do that. Okay, so I think a lot of times people influence other people into situations that are not natural, and this is the reason why there's so much unhappiness in the world. You know what I mean? I already have a shitload of unhappiness. Okay, everything in my life is unhappy except for my little things that I choose to have, and these people want to beat that out of me too. Okay, I mean, I literally am just so tired of how people cannot find any proper form of rulership within their religious organizations. What they have are dictators and, you know, people who cause harm to other people. You know, a couple nights ago I showed the video about, you know, the video of, you know, the line video with the Mormons and stuff like that. You know, and I know going back to C.B. Briganda's days, you know, they were cloning people and stuff like that without people possibly knowing, or maybe they were knowing. I don't know. I need to know, dig deeper into that reading of, me being a part of a funeral business and not really knowing what I'm doing with I was thinking the juices, the fluids of people, and not really having an idea of what you're doing. But, like I said, in some religions it might be where you become baptized and that's your consent of being, coming back into this. And then, but see, I also got the death penalty card in that reading, so which makes me think that some people were getting cloned as a form of punishment by the Mormon Church for not being, whatever, you know what I mean? Not being a part of their religion. See, and to come back and to be bullied into submission to be a member of their church. That is very, very strange. And much like the situation of the Jewish people that they wanted to perform baptisms of the dead to, that's horrifying to a lot of people. That is horrifying because, the dead used to be or looked upon as like, okay, not necessarily sacred, but just something that you respect, okay? You respect people's last wishes, you respect that sort of stuff because this is their time to depart from the earth, okay? Not coming back when they didn't ask for it, especially coming back in a pile of shit, because that's exactly how I look at the earth. I mean, how I look at how that everything has become and what it is. I mean, it's garbage. It really is. Anyway, what else did I want to say? I get the intuitive message that people are excited about ending human trafficking. And like I said, I'm trying right now. By me making this video, I'm doing things to try to encourage myself to keep going on the moral reset because, like I said, I have only dealt with negative situations. Every time I try to do something, I am always met with something, negative. Or I can't sit here and meet the right people. I can't sit here, or I have to question their identity. I will say that Facebook is one of the worst places to communicate with people. Social media is becoming questionable. Okay, I cannot tell you how many different accounts that I have. Celebrity accounts that I have of what I think is the same person. Like I have at least 2 Tyler Perry friends on my Facebook who is who they say they are. You don't really know. And so I do know that there's websites where you have like the contact information. Like if I was to contact the Department of Education here in California, there should be some sort of contact list, okay? I mean, that's probably where the best way for me to start or whatever. Maybe it's not a good idea to try to get a review team because it's difficult to identify people through social media. But whatever the case is, yes, but I feel stagnated in my enthusiasm. Keeping up motivation, keeping up your enthusiasm is key, okay? This is why while I was working under certain people's, I'm going to call it regime, okay, where people were trying to force people to work a certain way or whatever, you demoralize people, you destroy, the people's hopes and dreams and their enthusiasm and their focus, okay? That is what is important. People have to be able to maintain that focus, maintain their enthusiasm for what it is that they do. And, by telling people what they buy, what they're supposed to wear, how they're supposed to act, that is too much control. And this is one of the reasons why, when I think about the New World Order with cyborgs, with transhumanism, with robots, and all this other kind of crazy stuff, humans are supposed to be unique. Okay, they're supposed to be unique. They're supposed to have likes. They're supposed to enjoy life. Okay, and this sort of power and control and this sort of shape and molding of the direction of, something that to me is even more evil. So when I think about people who were fighting for a cause, I'm like, okay, this was a trickster God. This was a trickster God. You were tricked into something that you regret now. Okay? And it is what it is. And this is what happens when you do not have the ability to know things for yourself. Knowledge is power. Okay? Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap up this video. It's only 10:51. I'm hoping, after lunch I will have some sort of energy to get busy on my project. I just really feel kind of like, yeah, I don't feel very happy today. You know, it's because, like I said, you know, it's just what happened to me and the dark cloud that it has, you know, this should have never happened. It should never happen. Okay. And, I am my own source of motivation. Let's just put it that way. Okay. And I'm doing the best I can. I'll be back with another video sometime later. Take care.